Shut up, compressor. Okay, so the B-17 has had a bit more work done. I've gone ahead and flat coated everything with some K-Colors XW1 Ultra Matte. Big fan of this stuff. It's the closest thing I found to basically like Stynel Res for clears. Here we've got the main cockpit area looking suitably busy. Still need to get in here and add some dust and grime and all that kind of stuff, but for the most part, it's pretty much there. I will add that these dials down here on the side, I'm going to go ahead and do the UV curing glue on top of them to give them some shine. I don't think it really matters, honestly, with what you'll be able to see once everything is closed up. But this is really coming along. It's pretty close to being ready to be installed. Speaking of ready to be installed, last night I was able to get the radio compartment all glued together and installed. And this is something that will, again, the floor I'm thinking is going to get some griminess from foot traffic going in and out. You know, the bomber crew itself plus the ground crew dealing with shit. And, you know, we've already seen how little you actually see of what's in here, so mostly just getting that effect in place. But this has already been glued so that it can literally drop into the fuselage and everything is good to go. And this actually gets me to one of the fun challenges of this bomber is literally everything from, you know, way up here with the Bombardier Navigator area to the cockpit to the bomb bay to the radio compartment, ball turret, walkway, like all the way back is all connected. And that makes it a huge pain in the ass for sort of an assembly process and painting and weathering process order, because you generally don't want to glue things while you're still painting them, or, you know, after you've painted them to make a huge mess of stuff. So it's kind of like, how do you figure out how to get everything in there and make it fit well, but also do all the weathering and shit that you need to do. So I'm doing some interesting things with that. Basically, bomb bay, since it's going to be closed, who cares? I've left the little hydraulic rams on there so that I can stand it up, but they're going to come off pretty soon. This I've gone ahead and glued on. Next will probably be the cockpit up here, so I can glue the Bombardier Navigator's floor into place. And then back here, I've basically said screw it and removed the mounting tabs for the ball turret and the little floor walkway around it. They glue into the fuselage, and that way I'm only worrying about smaller sections, basically. So speaking of that walkway, here it is, nothing fancy. I didn't really bother much with this compressor back here. I think that's what that is, because you'll barely be able to see it. But the floor is the floor. It will be grimed up with you know, the illusion of the crew walking all over it. For the Tailgunner section, again, you don't see squat of this, so I'm really not bothering, but there's the walkway, there's the ammo cases. Again, those were done up with the wood grain streaking method, but using Vallejo instead of oils. I think that came out fine. I mean, I wouldn't want it like super primarily visible, but for these purposes, totally works. And then the real sticky wicket here is the Bombardier Navigator deck area. So got some seats installed, gonna weather it a bit, got those ammo crates right there. I think it's pretty neat having the slightly different tone going on compared to the floor. We've got the shitty Norden bomb sight up front. And then in these, we also need to install this little control box area. I'm trying to get a sense of how far I need to go on this, if I really need to do anything to it, if it'll be super visible or not. Just not quite there yet. Then we've got the desk, which really needs to sit on the fuselage. It doesn't install very well onto this deck because it literally has like this one little tiny area where it touches it, and that's it. And so anytime that you move it at all, it falls off. But hopefully it'll hide some of the, see, there it goes, hide some of the worst shit going on. So that is basically where we're at. Got a couple of little doodads here. They're going up in that section. Then we've got the face of the This is the back of the instrument panel, basically. I kind of realized that when I was looking at it last night. I was like, oh, that's the back of the instrument panel up there. Very, very hidden by the actual nose itself. Painted a few of the boxes. I think that fire extinguisher needs to be gold, so that'll probably have to happen. But other than that, just kind of leaving this as is. I want to get a sense of how visible it is or not through all the junk that's going to be in the Bombardier Station. So here, I've gone ahead and installed, this is the, I want to focus. This is the little walkway around the ball turret and the actual ball turret housing. They both have mounting pins in the side of the fuselage, so I basically just mounted them and then made sure everything was happy, kind of spanning across the gap. This one doesn't matter. This one has a little trough on the other side it also sits in, so good to go. There's one of those fun acrylic wood-grained ammo bins. Again, very not visible. Tail wheel back here, and yeah. So one other thing I want to touch on is the cheat gun mounts on the front of the B-17. So these basically stuck out the front, and HK gives you zero provisions for mounting them. So basically, these are the awesome instructions, right? So you've got this part W5 that goes into the upper window here. Over here, you've got W4 that does the same thing. Then for the guns, it's like, put them there. That's it. That's all you get. Which is garbage. It's absolute garbage. So I looked at actual pictures of the bombers, and I was hoping they had maybe like, some sort of canvas bag or something like that, but they actually seem to have some sort of like big rubber disc looking thing. I'm sure that's not what it is, but it's definitely not just like a canvas shroud covering it. And so I was trying to think how to recreate that, and I ultimately ended up taking a chunk of styrene rod. Let's see, here's the actual rod that I used. So just some evergreen rod. I have no idea how thick this is, but it seemed to be the one that was closest to fitting. Because I came in here, took my punch, this guy, and just stabbed the shit out of this thing like as vertical as I could get it. Drilled through, made one side a slightly wider opening than the other so it could accommodate the machine gun. Then I sliced them, and then I had to sand them down to the right size. And then I basically just glued them in place. So got the master barrels installed there. These are set up so that, I was hoping they would be set up so that the, those may be stuck on there. Oh well. So I was hoping to be able to pull off the cooling jacket and make things a bit easier to paint, but that doesn't seem to be happening. No big deal. These are in there very securely. And this way we have all kinds of happy good times with the machine guns already mounted. We don't have to worry about, just kind of stick them in a rectangle and hope for the best. But I do need to now paint the guns before I close everything up. So overall, I think this is actually a pretty elegant solution. I also think it's completely inexcusable that HK provided nothing for mounting these, because they do provide some little cylinder looking things for mounting a lot of the other guns, but not these. I also think it's kind of bullshit that they didn't think of a way to maybe mount something like that to the front of a machine gun, and that way you just install it, and then afterwards you can put the barrel in when the build is done. I think it's kind of stupid that they make you do it this way. But yeah, so that's where we're at. Next phase is going to be, let's see here. So next phase is going to be starting to install all this stuff into the fuselage. Again, the problem is that all these things kind of like interconnect, which is annoying. So the floor up here, for example, is very dependent on this piece being installed. This piece needs to be in here. You can see kind of like it just sort of sits in there once it's installed. So it's a matter of doing that and being able to get in there and like put the desk in and all that kind of business. Just tedious work. But I'm more worried about the alignment of the cockpit in here getting these things all where they need to be so that I can get the roof installed down on top of this, because this one, you think it's an easy fit, but there's this little lip right up here that needs to go sort of, let's move you out of the way. It basically needs to fit. There's no good way to show this and do it at the same time. So basically, this lip needs to fit up under the curve of the fuselage, right? And that's slightly problematic when you're dealing with all these other things that need to fit in certain places and slot together and blah, blah, blah. So yeah, there's also these little grooves that the bulkheads need to line up in. I'm honestly tempted to try fitting everything together and getting this thing, the turtle deck, down on top first before closing the other side of the fuselage, because I just think it might make the fit a little bit better. But yeah, that's where we are at. Holy shit. So let's get on with weathering.